Okay. So this is kind of new for me. I'm doing a little bit of a pre-fight update. I normally do a post-fight update, which is directly out of the ring after my fights, usually. Um, Very, very close to after my fight all the time, just to kind of get the real emotional thoughts and impact of what it's like after a fight, what I'm thinking about, what the experience was like. Um, and this is, I think I've done talking about fights coming up and like what I'm experiencing or what I'm working on or something like that, but like a long time ago, maybe when I was up in Chiang Mai or something, which is like 8 years ago. Um, Now that I'm not fighting as much because of COVID for the past 2 years, I've had very, very few fights for me. Usually I was fighting like 30 fights a year, and last year I had two. So things have changed significantly. And having this much time and space between fights is really a different experience for me. It's more normal, I think, globally for what people are experiencing. I think people usually have a couple of months between their fights, which is something that I purposefully didn't want because it's very difficult to do, actually. When I was fighting all the time, and it's just like one fight leads into the next fight, there's actually a saying in German about soccer that's before the game is after the game, or after the game is before the game. Got that backwards. After the game is before the game. Which is basically like you're just constantly preparing for the next one, which for me was a very short, closed circuit, which is good for me. I really enjoyed that. It's one of the reasons we moved to Thailand, was to be able to fight all the time. Um, there's a lot of like mental uh, obstacles that come from not fighting frequently. When you fight frequently, you're just always getting ready for the next one. So there's like not a lot of time to like over concern yourself with what happened in the last one and stuff like this. Basically, like if you lose a fight, you have a bad taste in your mouth, and so you want to get that taste out of your mouth quickly. And fighting again does that. So I didn't lose my last fight, but basically the like span between fights has given me a experience that I'm not happy with or comfortable with. Um, I'm fighting on Friday. Today's Wednesday. I don't stop training. So like even though I haven't had fights, I'm training a lot. I don't really do fight camps, this kind of thing. So like I'm basically in maintenance phase all the time, and then I kind of upped my training a little bit, getting ready for this fight. Once I knew that I was having it, that kind of thing. But I don't do like a, you know, now it's time to fight for or train for a fight. Now it's time to change what you're doing to train for a fight. I don't really do fight camps. I'm just always training. But I was doing really well in my training, like mentally, physically, emotionally. I was doing really well in my training. And then once it comes to like fight week, there's this thing that happens, and it's happened even when I was fighting really frequently, is that it just gets serious in a way that is really unfortunate. It's mentally a thing rather than like a physical thing, but I think it really comes down to relaxation. And in Thailand, they'll tell you sabai, sabai all the time. And I think that it took me a really long time to understand what really sabai means. Um, we interpret it or translate it to English as relax, which kind of, um, it's more like be at ease, kind of. My sabai, the opposite of sabai, actually means like to be unwell. Like my sabai means like you're sick or you're tired or like you're just off somehow, like you're off. So sabai means like everything is good, everything is functional, it's at ease, whereas like disease is my sabai. Um, the kind of relaxation that they're talking about is not the way that we think of like grab a pint of ice cream and lay down on the couch. That's like what we think of as relaxation, but it's actually a little bit more, I think, the way that you would like unflex a muscle. It's to be untensed. So if you're like relax your jaw or whatever while you're at the dentist so that you can keep your mouth open for longer, that's the kind of relax they're talking about, is take the tension out. So when I was coming into this week of my training, getting ready for my fight, knowing that my fight is at the end of the week, um, my sabai went away like a lot, and it just completely distorted a lot of what I was doing. So when I didn't have a fight coming up, and my training was off a little bit, like I didn't have a good day, or like I was kind of not able to get things out that were working last week or something like that, there's no pressure. Like there's no sense of doom at the fact that that's not working. And so it's kind of like not that hard to move beyond it and just like keep going with what I'm doing. Whereas once you have a fight set, like once you put that on your calendar, there's this tension that comes in, this my sabai that comes in, because all of a sudden it means something. Like now it's significant that you're having a bad day, whereas before it was like it doesn't matter because there's no spot on the calendar saying you need to solve that problem by this time. And what's kind of interesting about this to me is that it's just the fact of the fight is what's creating that tension. It's not actually anything that I'm particularly doing wrong. I could have made the same mistake 2 weeks ago and it wouldn't have mattered, but that mistake on Monday when you're fighting on Friday all of a sudden feels really significant and really like doom and gloom and says something about you globally, rather than it being like that's something that you did wrong today or that's something you did wrong in that round or something like that. And so learning how to relax, like learning actual sabai, is really important for these kinds of contexts, which is that I wouldn't have that pressure on me. And so the significance of that mistake is only due to the pressure. It's not due to anything about me or even about the fight itself. It's that the fight is creating that pressure. So learning how to take that pressure, or to know that that pressure is there, and deal with that consequence under that pressure, with that pressure, because you can't just make the pressure go away. You can't just make yourself like, I'm not going to care about my fight. I'm not going to care about things that are important to you. Things are important to you for a reason, and so you have to learn how to function under that pressure rather than necessarily getting rid of the pressure. It's like getting rid of bad thoughts is never going to happen. Being able to get yourself to a functional place in the presence of bad thoughts is much better. I was interviewed for a podcast a couple of years ago, and the interviewer asked me about how do you get rid of your doubt and pressure when it's time to get in the ring? Like how do you get in the ring and leave your doubt outside of it? And I started laughing, and I'm like, you don't. All of your doubt, all your self-doubt, all your pressure, all your fears, all your like inner critic, they come with you into the ring. Like that's coming with you. It's just whether or not you give it space. It's whether or not you give it significance. And this is also a frequent question, and people are surprised actually when they find out that I still get nervous before fights, because I've fought so many times that they just assume that I don't get nervous before fights anymore, and I completely do. But it's about what you do with that nervousness. It's like that I've done it so many times that nervousness is not significant anymore. It's like I know this is going to happen an hour before my fight. I know I'm going to start getting butterflies 30 minutes before my fight. And so it doesn't feel like it's super significant in the sense of like, why am I nervous? Oh my God, there's something wrong with me. It means that I'm not ready. It means that I haven't prepared properly. You can do everything completely perfectly and still be nervous before your fight. You're about to get into a fight. You should be a little nervous. Like, you know, people who jump out of airplanes and stuff like this, if they're too calm, like people who do extreme sports, if they're too calm, they actually don't have the right arousal to pay attention to what they're doing, and their focus is off, and you can actually get hurt or killed that way by being too relaxed. You can also get hurt by being too agitated. You want to find this kind of like sweet spot. So I was thinking about what this dealing with the nervousness or dealing with the pressure while still functioning and getting ready for my fight, what that should be like. And I was thinking it's kind of like when you first start running, right? So you know how to run, like you literally know how to run. That's the physical part. And then you know how to breathe. Like you're not bad at breathing, but running and breathing at the same time is what allows you to be like an efficient runner. It allows you to be fast. It allows you to go long distance. All of these things is about being able to run and breathe at the same time. So if you can't do both of those efficiently at the same time, you're going to end up in one of two scenarios. One is that you're focusing on the running, but not on the breathing. And so you end up not being able to go as far as you wanted to, or you're like totally haggard, or you're just kind of like panting on the side of the road when you've not gone the distance that you want to go. That's because you focused on the running and let the breathing aspect kind of drop away a little bit. If you focus too much on your breathing and not as much on the running, you end up taking a lot of walk breaks. So you end up like not fully running the way that you want to, because you're like stopping all the time in order to allow your breathing to be what you want it to be. When you have both the running and the breathing working efficiently together, that's when you get like ultra runners. That's when you get someone who gets like a pretty good time on a marathon. You don't stop and walk, blah, 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 all of this stuff. That's being able to do both things well together. It doesn't mean you suck at breathing. It doesn't mean you don't know how to breathe. If when you're running, you're having a hard time breathing. And it doesn't mean you suck at running if you end up having to walk a little bit. It just means that your breathing and your running are not working together. So when I was starting to get really down on myself, because all of a sudden this pressure of my fight is creating consequence and significance in the little mistakes that I'm making, that's not being able to run and breathe at the same time. So I need to let that pressure that's going to be there and is appropriately there, because it just kind of like, it creates a bit of a paranoia almost. So it's not that I wasn't making those mistakes before. It's not that I'm making new mistakes. It's this paranoia that allows my brain to pick up on all these teeny tiny little mistakes that had no significance when I didn't have any pressure. So I was just like, that's fine. Like my foot's not going in the right place. My hook was awesome 2 days ago, and today it's just not even here. Yodkumpan's landing on my face like all day. It doesn't mean that I have no guard all of a sudden. It means that like I'm more aware of every time he's touching my face, whereas that didn't really matter as much 2 days ago. So a paranoid mind is not necessarily the worst thing, because it allows you to be hyper aware. It allows you to like see all of these little things, but you also have to have the relaxation, the sabai, in order to actually work on those things rather than simply pick them up. Simply being aware of them is a step, but it's not the final step, and it actually can totally like work against you, because you end up lost in time. If you're picking up all these little details and you're focusing on all these little details, you actually end up dragging. You're stuck in the past of something that just happened rather than catching up to what's happening now. So you can be hyper aware as long as you stay in time, like stay in tempo with what's happening. So you're hyper aware as it's happening, not judging yourself about what happened 4 seconds ago. So part of this running and breathing at the same time of the pressure creating a paranoid mind and the mistakes that you're making is being able to keep time with how that's happening, so that you can actually like be with what's happening in that moment. And then I think that's what I'm working on, or what I'm thinking about, because I don't even have time to work on it. That's what I'm thinking about in terms of dealing with the pressure and what it's doing to distort my mind and my physical abilities leading into this fight. My pre-fight updates are way longer than my post-fight updates. So thank you guys if you sat all the way through this. I don't know if I'll publish this before my fight or not, but these are my thoughts leading into my fight. It's been a while since my last fight, so a couple of months in between, and see you guys.